So the question that I'm asking all of us here this afternoon, are we understanding who these children are correctly? Are we understanding who these children are correctly? Our dominant approach to the category of childhood, I say, how we come to understand who this person that we call a child is in the country, and what childhood is pretty much shaped by how sociology, psychology and education around the world have come to think of these human beings. Now my colleagues in India here have been most helpful. Colleagues in India have begun to attack this dominant thinking about children and childhood as what they call a Western construct. They're saying that this psychology and this sociology takes the understanding of childhood from what their own middle-class children are like, and then expect the rest of the world's children to be like their children. So when these Western eyes then are cast on Indian children who live a different life, they see these Indian children as victims. Think now about how I spent the last 10 minutes in describing the situation in which our children find themselves. I was making an argument that our children are being treated very badly. I'm not saying, however, that they are victims. But the effect of the way in which I'm describing them is to evoke pity on them. And is very close to thinking of them exactly as that, as victims. And extraordinarily, our Constitution reinforces this. You should go now and look at the Bill of Rights. Look at section 29 in the Bill of Rights. And go and see how that Bill of Rights is written. Now, I don't bow down before the Constitution. I'm not a Constitution, if you like, obedient follower to the many problems with our Constitution, and I think we should be saying it. When you go and look at section 29 of the Bill of Rights, virtually every single item in that Bill of Rights is written in the passive voice. We see things like children are to be protected. Children are not to be detained. There's very little sense in that Constitution that children have desire, that children have agency, that children have intentionality, that children are able to do things. The whole gloss of the way in which the Constitution is written is about us doing things for them. And so this is where I think our Indian colleagues are helpful. They're asking us to think in much more complex ways about who our children are. And those ways, I think, are helpful in forcing us ourselves to think again about our own children. I'd like to say our own children aren't victims. They're taking voice. They're expressing agency. You and I know that these very children are making decisions about their lives are not the decisions that are in the textbooks. These children are making decisions about what it is that is to become with them, that our sociology and our psychology, and so here I'm extremely critical of my own disciplines, are not properly engaging with. So these children are making, our children, decisions at an early age about whether they will have sex or not, as the work of Charlene Swartz is showing. They're taking decisions about where they will live and where they will learn, often without their parents, as Aslam Fatah's work on Delft is showing. They're making decisions about whether they will join gangs, who their friends will be, as I hope some of my own work has done. And then there's this amazing story in Rachel Bray Goskin's, Khan and Jeremy Seeking's book about a 16-year-old woman who effectively decided, after having gone through a great deal of angst and thinking about what she was going to do, that she was going to divorce her parents. We've got also this extraordinary work, which I'm sure you know of, which show that young children are the victims of the abuse of other young children. So in terms of this, I'm wanting to make the argument here that we are misrecognizing our children and the childhoods through which they are going. So we have to be concerned when they fail school, when they don't get the medical attention they deserve, but it's important that we come to a full realization that this is not the whole story of who these young people, these children are. We must therefore, when we think of how we teach these young people, how we help them in the process of growing, not just growing up. I'd like to think that I'm still growing up. And that growing up doesn't have an end point. I'd like to think that we appreciate them as already human beings. And that many of them, not all I grant, would have been making decisions about life and death for much of their lives already. And here we are treating them, and sorry for the expression, like children. I'm not for a moment advocating that we reject the idea that children are vulnerable and should be left to their own devices. They must be protected. But we also need to recognize that these children have a voice. And we need to understand how we should relate to that voice. I'm saying to you today that we are in a state of confusion around how we engage with that exercise of working with children's voices. I'm saying to you that we are struggling to work with children's voices in respectful ways. All I'm arguing here is that we learn, and I don't know how to get this back, so if you can please get that image going for me. Thanks. So how do I go down? That one. Great. So I'm not a techie, so forgive the crudeness of the pictures. I spoke to you about Michelle Mutibi earlier. And what I'm wanting to say to you is that we're confused when we meet young people like Michelle Mutibi. In this newspaper article that I spoke to you of earlier, I listened really carefully to Michelle Mutibi. There's a piece in one of the articles when she tells her doctor at 2 o'clock in the morning, at the end of a 12-hour skin transplant operation that she has, and I'm quoting her, she says, "Doctor, fuck off this too." She says, "It will slap." Right? Or think about this other young man, this man. His name I used for you earlier. His name is Bindile Mshlobo, who appeared on page 14 of the Argus. He's pictured here, presumably entering or leaving the courtroom. Look at him. Innocent, even attractive, handsome. But he's in shackles. The shackles are shocking. But there's more to his story. Look at the t-shirt he's wearing. It reads, "I'm not perfect, but I'm so close it scares me." Now what's this young man saying to us? He's saying And I think that Michelle Matibi's assertion of her own agency is also saying, I don't want to be a victim. Don't treat me like a victim. But here's the challenge. In the way in which Michelle Matibi conveys her wishes, and in the message that Pindile Mhlobo presents himself, in what he has come to think about himself and the world in which he finds himself, and how he begins to imagine his sense of citizenship, the kind of identity as a citizen of the country, in all of that, Pindile is confused. He thinks he's close to perfection. And so I asked you, is this perfection the right to kill, as he repeatedly has? Is his perfection his right to do just as he pleases? And so here, in trying to bring this talk to a close, is our confusion. How do we begin to enter into a dialogue with Michelle and Pindile? How do we begin to start a real conversation with this extraordinary child, Michelle? To say to her, without taking any of her agency away, Michelle, it's not quite appropriate to tell the doctor to fuck off. Or even more tragically, to tell Pindile that there's something terribly wrong with this idea of control of the world that he has. So how do we do this? I'd like to suggest that what we are teaching in our schools and in many of our homes is almost frivolous compared to the issues that these young people are going through. Our misrecognition of them is now a serious issue. But I want to say to you, it's also an opportunity. We now have the opportunity to come to a much deeper appreciation of what our children's lives are all about, to come to understand them in their full complexity. This child, Michelle, is extraordinary. How do we help her to build a life for herself that will not end in the deep, confused state that Pindile has found himself? So, in closing, and in paying homage to Heli Robb, who believed in the full humanity of our children, how do we prepare and work alongside of young people to be able to manage their own lives, their own futures, so that they can get from it that which will help them not just to survive, but to flourish. So there is Michelle Matibi, in her illness, asking questions. Wat is daar binne? She asks about a cupboard. And then she goes to unpack the cupboard. She finds building blocks and her personal favorite, a mop. She makes her way around the room, mopping the floor. And then she walks back to her room with no walking frame. And the student therapist who's there with her shouts to her, Michelle, slow down. And Michelle says, ek wil nie stap nie. Ek wil hardloop. She shoots back. She's not a victim. All of our children, in their different ways, are like Michelle. They have agency. They're not victims. They don't want our pity. They want our respect. It is our job now to work out how to do this. It's my challenge, and it is yours. I hope that we can rise to it. Thanks. I'm very happy to have a conversation.
I think, yes, Klein, I'm just watching. Time is 22, but you cannot start that conversation without a response. Patrick, I can just see you, I could hear you wiggling at the back. Children's voices, children's agencies up your alley in what you believe in. And I think we need to allow some responses from the floor. So please, Klein, if you will indulge.